I thank you very much for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work podcast. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or even ambition. They fail because nobody is watching, and when nobody is watching, it is astonishingly easy to let yourself off the hook. So my guest today, Dennis McCurdy, spent 50 plus years as an entrepreneur. He's a Vietnam veteran, which we thank him very much for his service, financial planner, real estate investor, business builder, and the most consistent thread he found separating the people who achieve their dreams from the people who carry them to the grave is the same uncomfortable, unsexy, and completely transformational word that we live by today, which is accountability. Let's talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
So, my guest today is a straight shooter. He's battle-tested, no nonsense, heart-led, practical, relentless, and real. And I can say that because I've listened to some other episodes, and like I said, I thank you very much for your service. He served in the Vietnam War. My father and father-in-law both served in the same place, so I get the I get the feeling all the way around.
When you see them, Maurice, tell them welcome home.
I will. Yes. Well. Unfortunately, my father-in-law passed back in 2010 from lung cancer. And he thought it was something that he had gotten from the war. To be honest, he felt like he was sick. Yeah. So, but like I said, I thank you very much for your service, but I will tell my father that because he is having some challenges, right? Of coming back, how hard it was for him. Family kind of got a little off, and there are some challenges, especially with this word accountability. There's some things he's kind of dealing with right now with that. So there's some things that's kind of off, a little bit.
Send me his address. I'm going to send him a card after, okay?
Okay, I will. I could do that.
A special card for Vietnam vets to vet to vet.
Oh, okay, I could do that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so because of that, Dennis, I understand that you've started some businesses at the age of 23. You made your first million by 36. You've written 4 books, served your country, spent decades coaching people through the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So let's start somewhere in there, the root of everything, and especially everything that you teach. Why do most people, even smart, motivated, deeply capable people, struggle to hold themselves accountable to their own dreams? And what is going on underneath of all of that?
Whoa, big questions. And that's really the whole crux of the thing is, I will say, when we're young, we have parents, we have teachers, we have scout leaders, we have religious people. You go to the military, you have coaches. You have your drill instructor. You have your coach, your teachers in college. But once we get out on our own, unless we have a really good boss, we kind of lose accountability. And that is the secret. And I think I always like to say, I hate being pushed, but I love the results. And I think we tend to run away from that. So again, having a good boss that holds you accountable is affirming. It's not negative. It's somebody cares about you enough to affirm you and say, hey, you matter. I'm going to kick you in the butt.
Right.
You need to have that kick, and that's really the crux of it. In fact, my last book was Unleash the Power of Connection, which is all about mastermind groups, goal buddies, accountability partners, coaches, all those things, because as Eric Hoffa, the famous writer, said, we lie loudest when we lie to ourselves. And so, we need to find somebody to call us on our crap. That's basically it,
Yeah, but how do we adjust to that, especially in this world climate today. No one wants to be accountable for what they said, for what their actions are. They have this idea of, hey, I'm going to do what I want to do with no repercussions. But how does that work? So how do we move forward, reach our dreams and all that stuff if we don't have that person telling us or giving us that very constructive criticism back?
Yeah, I prefer to say kick in the ass. But, it's, we have to that's the whole thing. We have to learn to get out of our own way, and that takes a little bit of courage to say, okay, I was in a mastermind group with a woman for 7 years. We met every single month, and we were going to be was actually not a mastermind group. We became goal buddies because other people were invited. Then they would show up one time, never come back. Oh, this is inconvenient for me. Well, we met every month for 7 years. Why is it inconvenient for you?
Right.
So obviously you're not committed to your goals, or you don't want to be held accountable. So we would sit down every month. We said, this is what I accomplished this month. This is what I'm accomplishing next month. We wrote it down. We exchanged ideas. We also exchanged post-dated checks for $500.
Okay.
And said, okay, I don't do my stuff. You keep my money, have a party. 7 years, I never cashed a check.
Wow.
Because at some point I couldn't go back to her and say I didn't do it.
Right.
And that goes back to that. We all do better when someone's watching.
Right.
Because we're humans, we're tribal. And so we need community, we need accountability, we need all of those things. In fact, I always tell people, way back in the old days, before our time, way old days, that, being exiled was almost worse than death. They said that when in the early 1800s in the United States or 1700s, if you were banished from the church, that was terrible. And actually was kind of interesting because they had a window in some of the churches called a banishment window. And so you still had to go to church. You had to stand outside and look in the window, but you couldn't talk to any of the people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And we need people, but we need people who we don't need yes people. We need people who say, whoa, yo.
Right.
You're off the track here, dude.
Right.
And you need to get your shit together. And that's the truth. And we become too. My book before this one was called "Suck It Up Cupcake."
Yeah.
Stop screwing yourself and get the life you want, because we screw ourselves. We run away from accountability. We're running away from our life in a way because we're not bringing out those things that we can bring out.
Right. And I think there's something that you have pointed out that in your group, right, where you're talking about, hey, you know what, people aren't showing up. You did it for 7 years, but here's the issue: people want things in a microwave. They expect that as soon as I come into this room, everything's going to hit me by osmosis. It's going to just seep in, and I'm just going to get it, initially. So how do I keep myself in a place where I understand that it's not going to be the microwave mentality? I might have to slow cook this thing for the next 5 to 6 hours. So how do I,
or 10 years.
Right. Right.
I mean, you didn't become a good award-winning podcast, in 3 months.
Right.
And that's one of the chapters in Unleash the Power of Connections called The Valley of Dead Dreams. And that talks about the fact that, hey, we get up here, we got a new idea, we want to do something. Oh, yeah, it's great, wonderful. We're going to go out there, we got all that energy. And then what happens? The work starts. So you're here, and then it's like work. And now you're in the valley. And it's like, wow, this kind of sucks.
Right.
But it's you have to do the suck to get to the other side of the valley.
Right.
And that can be a long, time. We see, unfortunately, in our world, I think we see people at the height.
Yes.
And we forget how they got there. And that's the bad thing, because we don't see, like Jerry Seinfeld, the famous comedian, who, spent 10 years writing one joke a day to get to where he was. And that's why I don't like to sometimes see these people like that, or people who are very successful, held in esteem to a certain degree because it makes people think it was just too easy, and that's what I'm going for, not the work.
Right. So in that, I just want to know, how would you explain to someone the Kisses formula, for holding sustainable habits? Because a lot of times we don't have that habit. We don't understand what that is. And because of, I'm being honest with you, I used to coach Little League football, and I've seen a lot more parents try to become better friends than being parents. So what kind of habits do we need to instill, not into just ourselves, but maybe even the generation after us? So just kind of give us an idea about that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, we have to understand that most of our life is run on habits, and they either help you or they crush you. Either way, so that goes back to, again, accountability. And I almost like to say the middle part of the word accountability is count. And count everything, because everything does count. And so one of the things with habits, though, because a lot of them are so ingrained, is I think we have to get off of this. And the same thing applies to that concept we talked about, I'm going to be successful tomorrow.
Right.
We have to start small. And that's where Kisses comes in. It says, keep it simple, sustainable, easy, and supported. Now, the S for supported is our mastermind, our goal buddy, whatever. But people make things too big, or they don't break them down to really small.
Right.
So I like the power of, two. Do 2 push-ups, do 2 sit-ups, do 2-minute walk. But the thing is, don't skip. If you do two every day, you don't skip 2. Sometimes the 2 becomes 4, then it becomes 6, then it becomes. I started out back on my elliptical machine last year, and I went. My goal is 2 minutes. That way, every day I'm a winner. I did my 2 minutes, and then I went to 4, then I went to 8, then 8, 12, 16. So it just keeps going up and up and up.
Right.
But that's now become a habit. Okay. And so once you get past that point where it's now, I can't miss the elliptical, then you're won. You've won.
Right.
Right. Just don't make them too big. That's the problem. People, I'm going to go to the gym every day, for 2 hours. Yeah, I heard that one before.
Right.
So how about, I remember listening to a guy named Robert Moyer, who wrote a book about what they call Kaizen, which is the Japanese theory of continual small improvements. And he was talking about this woman who wanted to cut out sugar. And so he said, well, don't cut out you have 2 teaspoons, don't cut out a teaspoon. Cut out a pinch. And next week or 2 weeks, cut out 2 pinches. And then 3. And then pretty soon you're down to 1 teaspoon. And then you continue again. That's the process, and that's what people need to embrace.
And so I'm a, because I did my research. I listened to some other things that you have been on. So of course, y'all do your research. Listen to Dennis. He has some fantastic examples. And I'm gonna use this particular one. I expressed to you at the top of the show about my father and the experience, just a little bit. So talking about your own self, right? Where I heard that you and your brothers, you had a father who was telling y'all to get up, make up your beds, things like that, right? And again, those type of things, we don't realize that type of habit give us the idea, one, of just follow through. Also, that for some people can be the beginning of a winning day, because sometimes we don't understand that those little things are wins, because everybody doesn't do it. And also, everyone doesn't even have a bed to even do it with. So let's be appreciative of that situation. So can you just explain how that might have been part of your growth to where you are today as well?
Well, it goes back to that habit of discipline, which I don't have in every area, believe me. So, but I'm still up at 5:15 in the morning. First thing I do is make my bed. Before I leave the bedroom, I've got 800 to 1,000 steps. I feel like I'm working the security, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And before I leave the house, I have 2,000 steps. I've had something to drink, and those. So then I hit the coffee shop at 6 o'clock or 6:15, and I start working. I read 2 pages of As a Man Thinketh every day. Just 2, but every day, and I've been doing that for years because it keeps reminding me.
Right.
And that's part of our. It can be whatever you want to be. It can be affirmations. It can be watching something positive like this show.
Right.
Anything that's going to enrich you and remind you that it's all about here. It's all mindset. And so the Kisses principle helps you develop that mindset, I think, too, because it's little tiny wins over time.
Right.
That become bigger and bigger and bigger. And understanding too that fear plays a role in most everything we do, which is a big,
Right, you're right.
Huh?
And I'm gonna touch on that story about, like I said, about your childhood. So, because there was another part of that story where you mentioned that your mom was kind of, you know what, lay off on the kids just a little bit. And I'm using that as an example because sometimes someone tries to mediate for us, right? And gives us the excuse and maybe the built-in excuse to, for not to do something. And sometimes some of us can hold on to that too long, way too long.
Right.
And so how do we not allow that and understand the true value of what someone's really trying to teach us, and not versus someone that may have given us, I'm not saying your mom was doing this, but someone giving us that built-in excuse not to achieve more in life.
And there are plenty of them, plenty of enablers out there that will, and I think I call it almost a conspiracy because, I always say, if I don't call you on your crap, you don't call me on my crap. And so it's a kind of a cooperative thing that's like, oh yeah, we're all fine. No, we're not. BS, But one of my mom's favorite sayings was my father was McCurdy. They called him Mac when he was in the Army. He was a drill instructor. So my mother would say, Mac, they're little boys. They're not recruits.
Right.
And she was right to a certain degree because, he would just, sometimes unrealistic expectations. But, So, but again, we want to watch out for yes people in our life because that can be very detrimental for us.
Right.
We need somebody who, I think it was Jack Canfield said, we need somebody that will give us a loving kick in the ass, which is true.
Right.
And if we run away from that, like I said before, I don't like to be pushed, but I like the results.
Right. Right. And so when we think about something like your book, Suck It Up Cupcake, that's tough love, right? And some of us don't know what that really feels like. And some of us don't really know how much we really need it, as you're stating. And so do you really think that we really need it, or do we even acknowledge that we need it because we're in such a, I don't want to say soft, but sometimes that soft mentality, soft space? Do you think we really need it a little bit more, especially as we're building our business and things like that?
Absolutely. If I was the czar, I'd be a benevolent one, but I would do things, we forget that, again, back to holding someone accountable is affirming. It's saying, I care about you. It says, I want you to succeed. I want to help you. It's not a bad thing. Maybe sometimes the delivery is a little off, but,
right.
But it's not a bad thing. And so we have gotten soft. People got too much snowflakey. Sorry for you snowflakes out there, but one of my high school friends who is actually in the New England Football Coaches Hall of Fame had sent me a thing the other morning, and it was a picture of a 1950s woman with a boy in front of her running, and she's running after him, and it says, out for my morning jog with mom, but the woman had a belt in her hand. And that's the way it was back in those days. Yeah, you got the belt. You know? Or wait till dad gets home,
Right.
Yeah.
But I think some of that is again, like you said, accountability. So there were consequences to our actions.
Correct.
And so a lot of times we don't understand what consequences are, and then when we receive it so negatively. Now, I'm not saying like, get people to the edge of life,
Right.
I'm not saying that. But how do we deal with that consequence or understand the importance of consequence, especially since no one wants to do it?
That's the $1 million question, right? Because we need it, and people are running away from it. And again, we've gotten kind of soft, and and too much of everybody gets a trophy.
Yes.
That's not real life, as we all know.
Right.
Because we're actually hurting them in the long run. And I think there's been studies that have shown that the kids understand that it doesn't really mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point? I don't say you should beat them up I don't think you should chase them with the belt like the old days necessarily.
Right.
But I mean, it works. but we need to toughen up a little bit, and we need to realize, and we don't let people have consequences.
Right.
They can make all the bad decisions, keep making the bad decisions, and we just go, oh, it's okay there. You're a good person. Well, maybe like somebody would say, in the eyes of God, you're a good person, but here you're a piece of you need to get off your ass.
Right.
Because we're only hurting people.
Right.
Like, for example, the homeless thing. Here's my idea. I would take them all, stick them on a military base somewhere out in the boonies.
Mm.
I would make sure they had no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes, and maybe limited caffeine. They had to make their own beds. They had to cook their own food. They had to get responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And taking those actions, I think, would get them to a point where they feel good about themselves again. Yeah.
So, should I be worried about my self-esteem? Maybe the way I view myself, because sometimes when I look in the mirror, I might not like it. Is that the reason why
every day?
Right. Because sometimes some of us, when we look in the mirror, we really don't like it. We don't like what we see. We don't like what we feel. And so now we put on this mask, of someone else. So
right.
Why should I be so in touch with myself? Because unfortunately, accountability is that mirror too.
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, again, like Eric Hoffman said, we lie loudest when we lie to ourselves, right? And so it's just that mirror should be a reflection of what we need to do. What I mean? If we need to get healthier, we need to look at ourselves in the eye and say, hey, you're better than this.
Right.
You can do more than this. But you have to find people who will hold you accountable to that. Again, back to that, we all do better when somebody's watching. I don't care who it is. If you're walking fast, if you're walking and somebody's walking faster, you're going to walk faster.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's watching, you're going to do a little bit better. So that's so crucial. So I think when you look in the mirror saying, okay, maybe I need to get some help. Maybe I need to get some accountability because I'm not doing it myself enough. So instead of looking at it as, like you say you spent money on a coach, and I say, if you don't have money, I said in my book, then go mow the coach's lawn and say, coach me, I'll mow your lawn, right? There's always a way.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah. I'll babysit your kid. I'll walk your dog, whatever. If you just help me, and then start to get that accountability that I think once you start, it builds.
Right.
And that becomes, and I'm not saying ever, by the way, don't have fun. Right. I like fun. So you can't totally be some kind of a robot.
Yeah.
And that's not what you get. And I think sometimes people would think, they think discipline, they think robot, no fun. Mm-hmm. No, it's not that. It's being disciplined allows you to have more fun overall and feel better about it and feel good.
Right. So Dennis, I would like to say thank you very much for coming on to the show. I appreciate it. And for those individuals who need someone to be accountable to, they need to find information, get that tough love, maybe even learn how to barter, right? Where can they find your information and talk to you?
So they can just look at DennisMcCurdy.com. And they can reach out to me. Anybody reaches out to me, I will be happy to talk to them. I always respond. buy the books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get your own little, read 2 pages a day. That's all. And just get on that path. That's the secret. Start small, make it sustainable. That's the secret. That's my secret.
Wow. So I thank very much for sharing today. For those of you who need to know also, as Dennis talks about walking, maybe he could teach you how to walk on fire too. But that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole other podcast, right?
That's a whole other topic. But before I let you go, can you please answer this question for me that I ask all my guests? My would you rather question. So, would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Fork in the road. And I think it reminds me of Robert Frost. I came to a fork in the road and I took the road less traveled.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so the fork in the road, you got 50-50 chance anyway, right? 3 doors? Yeah, 33% chance. So I go with the odds.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I've heard people talk about the 3 doors being glass. I've heard, people talking about the movie Inception where the roads, bend upside down so they could kind of see where they're going. I've heard so many different imaginative ways of how they look at that question.
Yeah. I just think, you got to find the right path.
Mm-hmm.
The right path for you.
Right. So, but like I said, Dennis, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much, Maurice. I really loved it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And of course, everyone, I thank y'all very much for listening today. Of course, everything all Dennis's links will be in the show notes. But like I normally been doing, I need to leave y'all with a challenge. Identify one goal you've been carrying for more than 6 months that you have not yet achieved. And this week, find one other person and tell them specifically what you are going to do about it before the end of the week. And ask them to check in with you. I don't want you to be vague. I just need you to talk to them and say to them, support me during my journey. And a specific commitment with a specific deadline, with a specific person who will ask you directly, did you do it? That conversation is your first step out of the valley of dead dreams. I thank you very much for listening today, and I'll talk to you just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?